بعد أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ألم تر إلى الملأ من بني إسرائيل من بعد موسى إذ قالوا لنبي لهم ابعث لنا ملكا صدق الله العظيم. Before we go into this ayah, in just a few days we will be upon the anniversary. I apologize, I have a lot of allergy today. We will be on the anniversary of the Battle of Badr, which ensued on the 17th of Ramadan. In just a few days we'll be on the 17th of Ramadan. How quickly the month flies, subhanAllah. And how quickly and how easy Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes it for us as the days go by. I really pray that this is the case for all of us all. As you know, Battle of Badr was a monumental event in the history of the prophetic Islam of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Why do I say prophetic Islam? Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is what we're speaking about. It was a monumental event because that day would have decided whether Islam would live or die in the rest of the world forever after. It is so important that the Sahaba that fought in the Battle of Badr, whether they were victorious or whether they were martyrs, radiyallahu anhum ajma'in. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that they can do whatever they want, all their sins are forgiven. That's how monumental that occasion was. And the status of the Badriyun, those who participated in the Battle of Badr, is one of the highest ranks. Umar radiallahu anhu, for example, gave them one of the highest stipends after the early Muhajirun, some of the highest stipends in his Khilafah. We all know the importance of Badr. But today, what we're going to talk about is what happened before Badr. As you know, in the Makki Seerah, during the Makki period, Muslims were commanded by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to not fight back. Whether they were being tortured or murdered or harassed or whatever they were going through, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran says, Kuffu aydiyakum. You were told to not make your hands expand, meaning don't raise your hand to your enemy, don't fight back. This was the pacifist Islamic movement in the Makki series. And there was a rationale for that, where the Muslims were weak, and if they were to fight back, they would have been decimated in the Makki period altogether, because there were just a few. Now, after the Hijrah, in the Makki period, in the Madani period rather, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders in the Quran that now fighting has been prescribed to you. This happened when the Kaaba shifted from Jerusalem to Masjid al-Aqsa to Mecca. Now the Muslims not only are praying toward Mecca, psychologically Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may be hinting to them, your destiny is now the victory of Mecca. And then the commandments for the fighting come about because Muslims are getting stronger. Now they are being supported by the Ansar in Medina. At that time, they didn't know that Badr is going to happen. That was still a bit far away. Maybe a few days, maybe a few months, we don't know. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in order to encourage the Muslims to fight in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, revealed the story of David and Goliath, which we're going to briefly talk about today. That often is probably not talked about. This is an important couple of pages in Surah Al-Baqarah that we all should be familiar with. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us the story of David and Goliath, Dawud and Jalut. That sometime, so we'll read the ayahs, inshallah we'll translate as quickly as possible. أَلَمْ تَرَ إِلَى الْمَلَأِ مِنْ بَنِي إِسْرَائِيلَ مِنْ بَعْدِ مُوسَى. This is the ayah that we started with. Didn't you see from the elites of the children of Israel that came after Musa alayhi salam, إِذْ قَالُوا لِنَبِيٍّ لَهُمْ, when they said to their prophet. So who was the prophet at that time? So this is much after Musa alayhi salam, okay? This is much after Musa alayhi salam. There are internal wars going on. This setting especially is, there is a very, very small batch of, there is a small batch of believers, and they are against a batch of tyrannical army of in the Canaan area, which is now Palestine, over there, and they are about to clobber them. So these are the people now. They're going to their Nabi at that time. This Nabi is understood to be, his name is Shamuel. It's a little bit difficult for me to say. Shamuel, in English it's known as Samuel. So if you open up the Hebrew Bible, you'll find the name Samuel. So they asked their prophet, Ibath lana malaka, send us a king. Send us a king. You need to appoint us a king. Why? In their mind, it was power and kingship and dominion that was important to win over battles. So they're saying, you need to appoint us a king. Nuqatil fi sabilillah. If we had a king, we would support that king and we would fight along with that king. And we will be victorious. قَالَ هَلْ عَسَيْتُمْ إِن كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمُ الْقِتَالِ أَلَّا تُقَاتِلُوا. Do you think that perhaps that if fighting was prescribed upon you, it was not prescribed at that time, we learn from these ayat, that you will actually fight and you won't back off? They said, قَالُوا مَا لَنَا أَلَّا نُقَاتِلْ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ وَقَدْ أُخْرِجْنَا مِنْ دِيَارِنَا وَأَبْنَائِنَا. Like, why would we not fight in the path of Allah? And we have already been kicked out of our homes and our children. We are in diaspora. We've come from Egypt. Our generations before, they've come from Egypt. Now we're in this valley. Now we're entrapped. Of course we're going to fight. We don't have a place to live. We're constantly under fear. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَمَّا كُتِبَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْقِتَالِ. When fighting became mandatory upon them, تَوَلَّوْا إِلَّا قَلِيلًا مِّنْهُمْ. They turned away to fight. They all backed off, except just a few. So the Mufassirun explained that there was about 8,000 of them in the beginning, and they slowly started to deteriorate to a very, very, very small number. Wallahu alimun bil-zalimin, and Allah knows best about those who are the wrongdoers. وَقَالَ لَهُمْ نَبِيُّهُمْ. So Prophet Samuel alayhi salam, he said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ قَدْ بَعَثَ لَكُمْ طَالُوتَ مَلِكًا. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted. So it is understood that Samuel alayhi salam, he made a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that send us a king, appoint us a king. So now he's bringing the news back to his people, to the Bani Israel, that I have appointed Talut as your king. Talut, in English, he's known as Saul. S-O-L, Saul. Okay? So his name is Talut in the Quran, that he's been appointed as a king. Now they started to question, it's like him? قَالُوا أَنَّا يَكُونُ لَهُ مُلْكُ عَلَيْنَا وَنَحْنُ أَحَقُّ بِالْمُلْكِ مِنْهُ. That he's saying, we are more deserving than this Saul guy. Why did Allah appoint this guy? And what were their complaints? وَلَمْ يُؤْتَ سَعَةً مِنَ الْمَالِ. He doesn't have any wealth or strength or power. Why would Allah appoint him as our king? How can we support this person? He doesn't have any money. He doesn't have any influence. قَالَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ اصْطَفَاهُ عَلَيْكُمْ وَزَادَهُ بَسْطَةً فِي الْعِلْمِ وَالْجِسْمِ. Then Samuel alayhi salam, he explains that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has chosen Talut, not because of his wealth or power or his influence, but because he is very, very, very strong, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given him a lot of knowledge and is giving him a large body. He was really, really strong and big. Why was that important? The Canaanites at that time, they're known as the giants. They were really, really large and big. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had appointed the appropriate king to be fought against the Canaanites. Now, What are they thinking? What is the Bani Israel thinking? Their thinking is that only money can win over, but these other things are not that important. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is creating the situation that it is not money, it is really the appropriate kind of resources that you need. And that you need to have belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His edicts and His commandments. Now this Prophet is bringing you this king that has been appointed, Talut, and then you need to support him. But they have had a weakness in their heart. So as we go through this, contrast this to the story of Badr as we go along. What is happening now in Badr, for example? The Muslims are very, very, very few. They have the support of the Ansar. There's the Muhajirun. The Muhajirun are the ones, if I take you back to, if you're familiar with the Sirah, the Treaty of Aqaba, in there, the Ansar promised that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that we will support you inside the city. The contract of the Treaty of Aqaba of the Sirah when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came over to Medina did not include fighting on behalf of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It did not include that. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not have full support from Ansar that he knew about. Later on, of course, the Ansar came because of their iman. They came and they helped Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But there was another group there in Medina. It was the munafiqun, the hypocrites. They did not want to join. They were the ones, oh, now fighting has been prescribed. They're pretend Muslims now. They're in trouble. They're like, oh man, I have to go now die for this religion that we don't even believe in. So this is the scene that we need to think about. So these ayat are coming down where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing the Muslims before even Badr has ensued, what was the story of the children of Israel, those who actually supported their prophet and those who actually backed away. So this is the contrast Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving them. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَقَالَ لَهُمْ نَبِيُّهُمْ إِنَّ آيَةَ مُلْكِهِ أَنْ يَأْتِيَكُمُ التَّابُوتُ فِيهِ سَكِينَةٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ وَبَقِيَّةٌ مِمَّا تَرَكَ آلُ مُوسَى وَآلُ هَارُونَ تَحْمِلُهُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ. These deterrents, these people who did not want to support their prophet, they were looking for a miracle. They were like, we don't believe you. This can't be the king. Talut cannot be the king. We need to see a sign. So the prophet, he actually, Samuel alayhi salam, he actually said that Allah will send a sign. What will happen? The tabernacle, the chest, the tabut, that was Musa alayhi salam's tabut. We'll explain in a second what that is, will be brought to you. What was that tabut? So after Musa alayhi salam had passed away, some of his precious things, wallahu alam, nobody really knows for sure, because nobody has seen the tabut. Only we've read it in the Bible, and it's mentioned in the Quran as well, and there are some stories. But there was a chest that contained the possessions of Musa alayhi salam and some of the remnants, and the Quran even talks about it, that it has the things from Musa alayhi salam, from Al Musa, that will bring tranquility to you. So this tabut was also used in other places, but this tabut was actually lost. It was taken by the enemies or taken away somewhere, and then miraculously was brought at the footsteps of these people now. So now Samuel alayhi salam is saying, now you see the tabut in front of you? Now you believe? So they started to believe. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put them through a test. Now as they're marching toward the army, they come across a river. That river, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to test them. قَالَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مُبْتَلِيَكُمْ. Samuel alayhi salam, he told the Bani Israel, Allah will test you. بِنَهْرٍ فَمَنْ شَرِبَ مِنْهُ فَلَيْسَ مِنِّي. Whoever drinks from this river is not from me. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَطْعَمْهُ فَإِنَّهُ مِنِّي. And whoever doesn't take from this water, they are from with us. If you drink, you're not from with us anymore. This created a situation where now there were people from Bani Israel who were actually going and drinking, because they were traveling in the middle of the desert in the heat of the summer, going to attack this gigantic army of the Canaanites, and they're small in number, and there's water in front of them. Of course they're going to want to drink it. Similar situation, the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the Muslims in Medina are being put through, where now they're asked to fight a gigantic enemy that is well armed, well connected, all the tribes, 1,000 people coming, and they're just a handful in numbers. This situation got created. Now the hypocrites, they separated away from the Muslims. So it's clear who wanted to support Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam at that time and who did not want to support. There was a clear divide. You could clearly see who is not supporting. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates these situations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Imran, for example, says several times that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creates these situations of tests and trials to really see who believes and who doesn't believe, so that the believers know who is not going to support them, and so they need to develop this courage on their own. So some of them, they drank, and then they dwindled. The army of 8,000 dwindled down to 4,000, dwindled down to 800, dwindled down now to 313. The army of Talut has dwindled down to 313. Does that number ring a bell? This was the same number of people that were fighting the Battle of Badr. And this is the same number of people of Talut now are fighting against the Canaanites.
ربنا أفرغ علينا صبرا وثبت أقدامنا وانصرنا على القوم الكافرين.
Dawud alayhi salam now, he is just a young boy among the children of Israel, among those 313. So Talut alayhi salam, he's asking who is going to help, and Dawud alayhi salam jumped up. David jumped up, and of course the story says, he either had a stone or a slingshot or something like that. And then there is the commander of the Canaanites, Jalut, the Goliath. So I know the names can be confusing, Talut and Jalut. So Jalut is the Canaanite commander. He is this giant. And Dawud alayhi salam miraculously uses his rock or slingshot or whatever and kills Jalut. And the whole army doesn't know what to do, and they disappear. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this miraculous situation where now this army, this strong army of giants, is defeated just by this little boy, Dawud alayhi salam, and later on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him a lot of strength and wealth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is here educating us through these passages and educating the Muslims that are about to face the Battle of Badr. They don't even know they're going to face it. That how Iman in Allah and passing the tests and the trials is going to bring you the miracles you don't even expect that you're going to come. What happened in the Battle of Badr? What happened in the Battle of Badr? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them so many different miraculous benefits. They fell asleep. They felt tranquil. They felt strong. They thought the army was small. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave dreams to them that the army is small. When they actually saw the army, they thought it was small. When the enemies, the mushrikun of Makkah, they saw the Muslims, they thought they were, even the battle started. And of course, the famous angels were sent down that were named angels wearing turbans supporting Muslims. Some of the Sahaba saw, like, I just lifted up my sword and I saw the head of the enemy chopped off. I didn't even have to lift. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in Surah Al-Anfal that we reviewed recently in the Taraweeh, that you didn't throw, O Rasulullah, وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ رَمَى. It was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who threw. You didn't throw the dust. So there was a practice of the Arabs back then that whenever they despised something, they picked up some sand and they threw the dust. So when Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam picked up the sand and threw and it blinded their eyes, and they're standing like thousands of feet away from the Muslims. Subhanallah. And there were just so many miracles that happened. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala famously says in Surah Al-Baqarah, وَقَتَلَ Dawud Jalut. And then David killed Goliath. This is exactly the ayah. وَآتَاهُ اللَّهُ الْمُلْكَ وَالْحِكْمَةِ. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala after that gave Dawud alayhi salam dominion and wisdom. وَعَلَّمَهُ مِمَّا يَشَاءُ. And he taught him many things. وَلَوْلَا دَفْعُ اللَّهِ النَّاسِ بَعْضُهُمْ بِبَعْضٍ لَفَسَدَتِ الْأَرْضِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, it is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who creates situations where one party is dominant over another, and then later another party is dominant over them, so that the people don't create fasad in this world. وَلَكِنَّ اللَّهَ ذُو فَضْلٍ عَلَى الْعَالَمِينَ. And it is only Allah who is the grantor of all bounties. تِلْكَ آيَاتُ اللَّهِ نَتْلُوهَا عَلَيْكَ بِالْحَقِّ. And these are the ayat that are coming down to you on purpose. وَإِنَّكَ لَمِنَ الْمُرْسَلِينَ. King, his son Sulaiman alayhi salam. We all know about Sulaiman alayhi salam and how many miraculous powers that he had, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had granted them. Ability to speak to birds, and ability to control the winds, and ability to fly even on carpets, and ability, and you can think Aladdin, you can think whatever kind of superhero powers. That was Sulaiman alayhi salam. Amazing. In the book Zabur, what is understood to be the Psalms, the Psalms of David, which is one of the books in the Bible. He was such a mighty prophet. There is a hadith, it is authentic, and Allah knows best, that in the story of Adam, Adam is still not on earth, and he is shown his children. And every child that he's shown, the ruh, the arwah, the spirits that are shown to Adam alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is showing them, they have lights. They have the lights of Iman in them. Some are dim, some are bright, and there was one light that was super bright. And he asked, who is that? Adam alayhi salam asked, whose light is that? Who is that? And then the angels told him, or Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told him, this is Dawud. That was Dawud alayhi salam, already one of the highest stations. He used to sing, and the mountains used to sing back at him. It's also in the Quran. He had miraculous powers in such a sense that he immediately, when he became a king, he suddenly had so much wisdom and power. He was well respected in the whole community. And of course, when his son was born, Sulaiman alayhi salam, he himself became the prophet. He earned that dominion, and he earned those powers as well. And it was Dawud alayhi salam. Look at his spirituality. He was the one that we say the best fasting is the fasting of Dawud alayhi salam. He fasted every other day. The power didn't get to his head. He never let the power get to his head. He used to pray tahajjud every single night, the same way Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to pray tahajjud every single night. This is the humility of Dawud alayhi salam after he has this tremendous power and control in that whole region of Sham at that time. And some of the gardens are still around. Alayhi salam ajma'in, all of the prophets, including Shamuel alayhi salam. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala increase the light in our iman. We need to understand that it is not the resources and the situations that we find ourselves that would give us victory or let us break through any barriers that we see in front of us. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who actually gives us victory and breaks the barriers. All we need is the iman, and all we need to do is try. And once we try, no matter the barriers, no matter the turbulences, no matter the situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala through His miracles will make ways for us. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continue to support us through His miraculous army. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alamin.